Hi everyone, this is Yelena Kraus and welcome to another card video. This video it's a little bit different than my other ones since we're gonna make 8 cards using Spellbinders for Basics by Yana Smakula. So bear with me, this video it's longer than my usual videos, it's about half an hour, but we're gonna make 8 cards. So here you're getting a little snapshot of all the cards that we'll create in today's video. And we're going to start with foiling all the elements first, and then we're going to move to assembling the cards. We're going to do some foiling in the middle of the video again for this card, which has the stripped like rainbow background, like polka dot background, but besides that, all the foiling will be done ahead of time. So there are 4 new hot foil plates or hot foil plate sets for Basics by Yana, and they're the sentiments, Yana sentiments, polka dot strip, there is the foliage border, and as well organic foliage. So we can see those here, and they all come with coordinating dies. So once you have foiled those, you can go ahead and die cut, and it makes it much easier to add them to cards. So this is the polka dot strip, and you can build a whole background. As well, there are new Glimmer foils, hot foils by Spellbinders. We have a Espresso's been Speckled Aura, Speckled Prism, the set of 4, and so on. So we're going to use a variety of that. We're going to do some foiling on white cardstock and colored cardstock. So here I have my Glimmer machine, and I'm adding that circle border. I'm going to wait for it to heat. Once it's hit, heat, I'll add the foil on top. I'll first remove it from, kind of undock it, put the foil, put the paper, put the plates, and run it to my platinum die cutting machine. So I already did a couple. Here magenta and gold, and I'm docking the plate again, and we'll continue to foil the circle borders a few more times. So I'm using a bunch of different foil colors. This is the Speckled Aura, and then I'm cutting that barcode and putting it inside the roll, so I know which is the code and which color it is for future use, and I just toss the packaging. So while my plate is heating, I use that time to cut some of the foils that I'll be using. So here in Magic of YouTube, I have a bunch of die cut, and I'm using, those are older Spellbinders dies and stability dies, the circle ones. They're old classic, and I'm going to use one of them to die cut those circles. So while I'm die cutting off the camera onto the side, I move onto the side, I'm foiling the Yana sentiments, and I'm just adding a few sentiments on my Glimmer plate. I'm just moving them around so I have enough space between them for die cutting. As well, I use the most of my foil. So they're not very close together, but they're not so far apart that I'm wasting foil or paper. So I'm trying to see if I can reuse some of the little pieces of foil that I have. Nothing really works, so I'm just gonna cut a new piece of foil. I'm using here magenta, and I press the button to heat set that. Kind of to warm up the plates, and while it's warming up, while that light is flashing, I'm using the time to cut a bunch of foil. This is the new Moonstone, or probably, I apologize, that's not one of the new, I believe it's not one of the new colors. So I'm adding some pink, and that the light is now solid, I can undock my plate, put the foil on top, put the white cardstock or any colored cardstock, put the 2 plates on top and run it through my die cutting machine. I apologize, you see there my arm cranking the machine, and there we go. So next I'll use different foils. I'm cutting more foil here. This is the espresso bean. This is one of the new foils. So while that's heating, I'm going off camera and die cutting some of the circles. So now it's all heat. I'm running that through the die cutting machine, and look at the magic. I'll just remove the foil, and here we go. We have the nice espresso bean. So there's a little bit over foiling. Probably it moved while I was putting it in the die cutting machine, but you can easily remove it with an eraser, or if a regular eraser doesn't work, you can use a sand eraser. It's very easily removable, that extra foil. I apologize, you saw my head there. So next step was, after we have foiled all of those sentiments, the next step will be to die cut all of them. So I'm just removing the sentiments off my Glimmer plate, the Glimmer machine, the platform. I'm adding from the foliage border, the little flowers and the little leaves. Now let that heat. I'll add foil on top. Now we have that flashing light. When it's nice and hot, I will undock the platform, add the paper on top, and run it through my die cutting machine. So now I'm undocking, putting that paper on top, the plates on top, and I will run it to my platinum machine. You can see me here cranking that machine. And here's what we get. So in meantime, I did a bunch of those, and next we're gonna do the border, the polka dot border. And here I've already done a couple on white and on gray cardstock. And I will show you how to do that continuous border. In meantime, I did like a couple of those foliage borders too. That goes together with the circle frame. But let's move on to the polka dot border. So I'm just lining it up here. I want it to be nice and straight. So first we're going to do it on colored cardstock. Here I'm using some pink foil. And that didn't really fit, so I'm cutting a new piece of foil, putting it on top, and it's already nice and hot. I'll undock it, put the cardstock on top. So the platform has grid lines, and I lined up my cardstock with the grid lines since the border was lined up with the grid as well. I'm running that through the die cutting machine. For this one, because it's larger and more solid, I did back and forth. And here is the result. We'll put that aside, and now we're going to do the continuous border. So I'm docking back into the docking station for the platform. So we have that, it's heating now. Again, I'm lining it up. I'll undock it when it's hot, running to the die cutting machine. So here we have one time, we have foiled it one time. Next I'm removing that foiling die from the platform. You need to be careful, it may be really hot. So I'm using the scissors, and then I positioned it to be continuous border, kind of to give us continuous background, and secure it with some washi tape. So I did like hinge on the left side, and then underneath I added the foil, and again secure it on the other side with washi tape. I turn it upside down and let it heat, and then I'm gonna run it again through the die cutting machine. So now we can remove that tape and the foil and the plate, and here we go. So we have one piece on the left side that is unfoiled. So we're gonna do the same thing for that one too. So I'll let that plate, that platform heat up. While that's heating up, again I'm lining up the border. I again apologize for my head being in the way, but I had to make sure that it's nice and straight. So I secured it on the left side. So next I will add the foil underneath, and I'm gonna secure it on the right side, making sure I'm using the edge of my cardstock to make sure that it's nice and straight, that that border is parallel to my cardstock. I'll put it upside down onto my platform with the cardstock being on top, and I added a piece of scrap paper so the foil doesn't go onto my plates. When it's nice and hot, I'll run it through the die cutting machine, and here we have the results. We have nice background. I'm just trying to remove all the tape from it. So by magic of YouTube, I have all of this foiled, and next we have left the organic foliage. These are nice little kind of branches and different foliage. Just adding those to the platform once it's hot. I'm gonna add a couple from the foliage border, the little leaves, so I have extra of those for embellishing my cards. So while that's heating up, I cut a bunch of foil. Once it's nice and hot, I added the foil and the paper and undocked it, put the plates on top, and ran it to the die cutting machine. And I kept repeating the process until I did a bunch of those. So here are the results. Here I used the Speckled aura. So by magic of YouTube, I have all of them foiled and die cut. You can see that's a bowl full of die cuts. So I went a little bit overboard, and I spent probably good 3 to 4 hours die cutting all of those. So I separate all of those, like the different shapes in different bowls, so it's easier to find what I wanted to use. But this is definitely not a requirement because I had so many, and I was creating the cards as I go. I wanted to have all of those on hand, and I wanted to know which one goes. I wanted them to be separated by shape. So let's make the first card. I'm using one of the polka dot borders background on Paradise cardstock using the Moondust foil, and I'm using the same foiled elements. I'm using some flowers, sentiment, and some of the foliage. Just arranging where I want them to be, and next I will just adhere everything together. But before we go to that, my panel was A2, which means 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I'm trimming it down to 4 by 5 1/4. Next, using some foam squares and a top folding note card, white note card, I will assemble the card. So I'm adding first that circle frame. And then the little flowers. Then we'll add the foliage. And I'm using two thicknesses of foam adhesive, like the foam squares, the regular and the thin ones, so that way the foliage, the leaves that go under the flowers have a little bit less pop up to them, so they'll layer up nicely and you get more kind of dimensional look. So I think we're done with that. Next, I'll use a liquid. I will use liquid adhesive to adhere the sentiment, and then fun foam to adhere the panel onto the top folding note card. Again, I'm using liquid adhesive to adhere that foam. So I'm just gonna adhere it to the note card. And I decided to add a few white jewels for extra interest, just positioning them along that circle frame. Again, I'm going to use liquid adhesive to adhere those down. This is very strong liquid adhesive, so it's going to hold them down even when they go through the mail. So this finishes our first card, and let's move to our second card. So I'm using one of those foliage borders, like the foliage border, and here I had a little bit adhesive on that circle frame, so I removed it with the adhesive remover. I'm using the gold foiled elements, so I'm gonna pick out 3 flowers and 2 leaves, 2 sets of leaves, and I'm using alcohol-based markers to color them in. And then I picked out the sentiment that again was foiled in using gold foil. So we're coloring this really quickly. I'm not doing any rocket science coloring, it's just basic coloring, mixing a couple, kind of blending 3 colors together for the flowers and 2 for the leaves. And the foil kind of resists the colors, the markers. And because it's gold and the markers are a little bit pale, even if it's not really noticeable that we color with something else but gold on top of that gold foil. So next we can assemble the card. I'm just positioning where I want that flowers to go, those flowers to go, and the leaves, and using some foam adhesive to adhere them together. So I'm adding foam squares in the back of that circle. I'm going to use a T ruler to make sure that that sentiment is straight once I adhere the circle down. So once it's adhered down, I'm going to go ahead and trim that panel down to 4 by 5 1/4. It was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And next we're going to adhere the flowers. Then we're going to go ahead and do the same with the leaves. Again, using fun foam, I will adhere that entire panel to a pink top folding note card. And you can make I made my own note cards using different colored cardstock, measuring 4 1/4 by 11, and then I scored at 5 1/2 and then fold it. That way you get a top folding note card, A2 note card. Again, after I added the fun foam, I'm using liquid adhesive to adhere it to my note card. And the liquid adhesive gives me a little bit more wiggle room to make sure that that panel, when it's adhered down to the note card, it's nice and straight. To finish off the card, I'm adding some pink jewels. I'm just positioning them now where I want them to be, and then I'll use the liquid adhesive to adhere them. So here's the finished card. So let's move to the third card. We're going to do a little bit scoring. I did 2 lines. They're about 2.5 inches from the top at 1/16 inch apart, and then I'm going diagonal to form a grid. I'm using my scoring tool. So this way, because I'm using white panel, I wanted to add some interest. So the score lines, they're 1/2 inch apart, and I'm going both ways to create that grid, like scored grid. I don't know if you can see on the camera, and I'm stopping where those first two um, scored lines are to separate the top and the bottom part. So next I'm picking out some of the flowers and Foliage that were embossed, not embossed, but foiled in the espresso bean. And as well as sentiment foiled with the same color of foil. So I just did thank you and 3 flowers and 3 leaves. I'm gonna go ahead and color those in. I'm using purples and greens. I'm using alcohol markers, but you can use any coloring medium of your choice. I'm just quickly coloring everything. So here we are coloring the last one. And next we're gonna go ahead and assemble our card. So I have the sentiment, I have the leaves, all the flowers, I have all the elements I need. In the meantime, I cut a thin strip of brown cardstock, espresso cardstock. I'm going to adhere it between those two parallel scored lines there. They separate the non-grid and the green area of my panel. Next, I'll use the foam squares to adhere the flowers onto the panel and then adhere the foliage and the sentiment. So I'm using liquid adhesive for the sentiment. The thank you sentiment is very intricate, so it's harder to add dimensionals on the back. You can add, but you need to trim it really thin. So I'm adhering the leaves. Next I'll add some purple jewels. And I'm using again liquid strong adhesive to adhere those down so they're nice and secure and they don't fall off once the card is mailed. Next I'll use again fun foam to adhere that to Espresso colored note card. Again I'm using here top folding note card. Just adding that fun foam on the back, and then I'll use again liquid adhesive to adhere down to the Espresso colored note card. So this finishes our third card. So there are the 3 cards so far. Next we're going to move to some fun background. So I decided to trim off to cut a bunch of strips using 5 different colors like teal, pink, orange, yellow, or more like citrine color. And I covered the A2 note piece of cardstock with sticky adhesive, and then adhere all the strips together to create this fun background. Next I'm going to use the polka dot border to foil the background. So here's the first go through, and I want it to be larger, so I'm positioning that border again, lining it up to create continuous background. I'll secure it with a tape on one side and create a hinge. I will put the foil underneath and then secure the other side and then put it on my Glimmer platform. And once heated, run it through the die cutting machine and have a continuous polka dot background. So here I'm using the 3 ruler to make sure that it's nice and straight. So in the meantime, I'm preparing my elements for another card. Here I have that polka dot background again. That's on plum cardstock and foiled in pink foil. In the meantime, while I was cutting that, this one was done. So let's remove the foil and the plate and see what we get. So here is that background. We have a little bit over foiling, which is easily removable with regular eraser. So just erasing all that, and we're just going to use a square from that background. So here we're moving back to the card that we started making, and I used that border to create, kind of mark my cardstock, that white panel, because I'm creating like off, kind of angled card front. So to make sure that I'm in the boundaries of that polka dot, I marked it with pencil. I'm gonna adhere that border to a white top folding note card. I'm adhering to the bottom, and I have my other white panel already cut with an angle. So I will use fun foam to adhere that on top of the note card with adhered foiled border. I'm using liquid adhesive, making sure that it's lined up on the top. So now when it's dry, I'm gonna adhere all the flowers and elements and sentiment together. So right now I'm just arranging them where I want them to be and trimming off, because I'm using underneath it's fun foam, so I wanted to go further underneath, but it was getting stuck on the fun foam, so I just trimmed a little bit that foliage piece. So I think I'm satisfied with this arrangement of the flowers and the foliage. I'm gonna go ahead and start adhering everything down. So for the happy birthday sentiments, I'm using foam adhesive. And then I'll do the same with the flowers and the leaves. So here is the fourth card. It's finished. And then I decided to add some pink jewels. Again, I'm using a strong liquid adhesive to adhere those down, so we make sure that those are nice and solidly adhered, so when they go through the mail, they don't fall off. So now our card is done. Now we can move to this fun background. I'm trimming it down to create a square, and I'll have some left over, and I'm going to make 2 more extra cards using this background. One is very similar to the first card, and the second one I'll just use that strip that we see here on the side. So I'll just use the polka dot gold foil border, adhere it to a white panel 4 by 5 1/4. I'll add the thank you sentiment. So while that's drying, I'm gonna trim this border down to about 4 strips wide. So now that the previous card has dried, I'm just adhering that thank you sentiment and using fun foam to adhere to my card. So we're adding the fun foam now, and we're done with that card. So now we're gonna make the second card using the second square from that background. Again, I'm using fun foam to adhere in back of the square, and then I'm adhering it down to 4 by 5 1/4 piece of white cardstock, making sure that it's nice and straight. And for this one, I decided to use Best Wishes sentiment, and I'm adhering it again with fun foam to a top folding note card, white note card. So here I decided to do something a little bit different. I added 2 pieces of the leaves, gold foiled leaves, to the side of that square, a little bit extra interest. So we're done with that one. Now we can move with that border piece. And I die cut bunch of gold foiled, a die cut bunch of the foliage from the same colors of cardstock as the strip background. I'm just going to add it to the bottom and then add 3 pieces of that foliage on the top and a sentiment on white. So here we're adhering those using fun foam, not fun foam but foam adhesive. Then I'll trim the excess from the strip and adding happy birthday sentiment using the foam adhesive. Again, we're going to use fun foam to adhere it to a top folding note card. Again, you can use foam tape, but I find that fun foam works better when you're mailing those. So because there's equal thickness through the whole front, it's less likely to get smushed and deformed when going through the mail. So let's take a closer look to all the cards we have made so far. So we have 7 of those. And I decided to go make one more really quickly with all those foiled foliage. So I'm using pink, paradise, and orange. I'm trimming a white panel down to 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to use the T-ruler to make sure that the first one is nice and centered there, and then to position as well the other 2. So they're on the same level and that they're on the same distance from each other. So we have those done now. And then what we have left is just a sentiment. I'm using the Sending Love sentiment and I'm adding little thin pieces of foam adhesive on the back. And I'm making sure that that's nice and straight. So I'm adding a little piece of adhesive under the love and the sentiment. I'm adding the fun foam on the back and then adhering to a white top folding note card. So thanks for hanging out with me for this long video, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so you're not missing any more ideas or inspiration here. As well, don't forget to subscribe to my blog. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye!